You ever feel that deep down exhaustion that has absolutely nothing to do with being physically tired? Well, today we're going to dive into something called the intellectual tax. It's this hidden cost that makes some of the brightest people out there decide that silence is the best option.
Yeah, see, this isn't about needing a nap. This is a whole different kind of mental drain. It's like your brain is running this super powerful, complex software while it feels like everyone else is just, running on a much simpler operating system.
Seriously, think about it for a second. You've got this perfectly clear, high-definition picture in your head, right? But trying to translate that vision into words for someone else, it feels like climbing a mountain. If you know that feeling, then you're already halfway to understanding what this is all about.
So there's actually a name for this whole experience, the translation burden. That's the exact moment when explaining your thoughts stops feeling like a conversation and starts feeling like a really draining, thankless job.
And, here's the really frustrating part. When you do pull back and go quiet, people get it so wrong. They think you're being arrogant or you're aloof or you're just not interested in connecting. But that's not it at all. This isn't about thinking you're better than anyone. It's about pure and simple self-preservation.
So let's just get to the bottom line here. If you find yourself staying quiet in a meeting or just nodding along when you totally disagree, it's probably not because you've given up. No, it's because your brain has run a quick subconscious cost-benefit analysis and the verdict is in. The energy it would take to explain yourself just isn't worth it.
Okay, so to really get why this happens, we need to look at how our brains are actually wired. A lot of this friction comes down to two totally different ways of structuring information.
And this slide right here just lays it all out. On one hand, you've got the linear mind. It processes things step by step. A leads to B, which leads to C. It's like a straight road. But the matrix mind? Oh, it's totally different. It sees point A and instantly connects it to this whole web of history, future possibilities, related patterns. It's not a road. It's a three-dimensional map.
So, trying to squeeze that entire complex 3D map of an idea into a simple A to B sentence? Well, this quote just nails it. It feels like trying to power a whole city with a handful of tiny batteries. It's just wildly inefficient, and you can almost feel your energy draining away.
So let's talk more about that energy drain, because it's not just a feeling. It's a real biological cost. There's a very high mental expense that comes with constantly trying to build a bridge between these two different ways of thinking.
Psychology actually has a term for this. It's called cognitive distancing. And it's basically the huge gap between the person who sees the entire forest, the weather patterns, the soil, the whole ecosystem, and the person who is just looking at one single tree. And the bigger that gap gets, the more energy you have to burn just to be heard.
And if you want some hard science, here it is. Your brain, just by itself, uses about 20% of your body's total energy. It is an absolute energy hog. And when you do that kind of high-level thinking, that complex translation we're talking about, it just burns through your fuel reserves like crazy.
I mean, look at this. This chart shows it all. A simple, casual chat, no big deal. But trying to do that complex translation, to bridge that cognitive gap, whoa, the energy burn just skyrockets. You can practically feel your internal battery flashing red.
And you know the feeling, right? It always starts with that little internal sigh, that pause when you realize, they're not with me. They're not even on the same road.
And then you have to backtrack. You got to completely abandon the point you were trying to make just to go all the way back to the beginning.
And before you know it, you're explaining fundamental concepts, defining basic terms you just assumed everyone already understood.
Every single one of those steps, that's you paying this huge metabolic tax. And here's the kicker. If the other person isn't even curious, you get zero return on that investment. It's just a pure draining loss of energy.
So what do you do? Well, the answer isn't to just try harder. The answer is to reframe the whole thing. This isn't you failing to communicate. This is a strategic retreat. It's an intelligent choice.
I want you to let this one really sink in. Your silence is a valid and, frankly, a very smart defense mechanism. It's your brain's way of protecting its most important asset, your cognitive energy.
So from now on, think of it as a strategy. You're choosing to protect your energy. You're preserving your nuanced view of the world from being flattened into something simple. You are deciding where your intellect is best invested. And maybe most importantly, you have to understand that you are not obligated to be a 24/7 educational service for every single person you talk to.
Because really, when the cost of speaking is sky high and the reward is non-existent,
This quote is the absolute truth. Being smart isn't just about the amazing things you can explain, it's also about having the wisdom to know when it's better to just say nothing at all.
So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. Does this sound familiar? Does it reflect what you go through in conversations? Because just being able to spot this intellectual tax when it's happening, well, that's the first step to deciding whether or not you want to pay it.